Want to ring the bell?
All right. Ding, ding.
What is up? Welcome back to Two Views Movies. I am Garrett.
And I am Carson.
And today we're talking about another Warner Brothers HBO Max release. Came out just a few days ago. It's taking me back a little bit. These HBO releases at least have somewhat of like a theater cadence to them, right? Like, oh, hey, it drops on Friday. You know, get to go see it for the weekend. So even though we're not actually seeing it in theaters, it feels kind of like old times.
Yeah, it's almost like at least the way we've been treating them it's, okay, released in theaters, so you go opening day type of thing, and so we watch them opening day. Or it's even, HBO, like Game of Thrones, sort of, you
Sure.
wait till Friday until a new movie drops, and what's that new movie? And,
right. And I guess, like, we had gotten out of the Friday habit, right? I mean, sometimes we were running out on Thursdays because they movie companies decided to just start releasing all their movies on Thursdays. So we would go see them on Thursdays.
Well, it was Thursday at midnight, and then midnight turned into like 7, 6, 5:30.
Yeah. That would have been so much better in college to not have to go to a midnight release. Instead, you could go to like 8, of course, I guess like 8 p.m. now to like 38-year-old me is like what midnight was to
Right. We had no
21-year-old
problem
me.
at midnight in college.
Yeah. I think the last time I ran out and saw a late movie was actually, oddly enough, another Lakeith Stanfield movie. It was Sorry to Bother You.
Oh, you
That
saw
was
that?
the last time yeah, because you went and saw it. And you're like, hey, you got to go see it. And like, it was Saturday at like 10 o'clock when you sent that to me. I'm like, all right, well, I got nothing to do. So I hopped up out of bed and went and saw Sorry to Bother You at like a 10:45 showing.
Yeah, because we saw it, and I didn't want you to see, because you scour the internet often, and I didn't want you to see anything about it. So I was like, you need to go soon. And you left right then, which surprised me. But I appreciate your effort there.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking Judas and the Black Messiah today, new release. It's going to be a little bit before we have another good new release, I think, from WB. I think it's actually not until the Snyder Cut that we get something new from WB after having Wonder
You
Woman
said
84.
good, and then you said Snyder Cut.
Well, yeah. I think good there was
in
doing
there.
a lot of heavy lifting.
It's in there.
There was air quotes around the good, meaning like it's something of relevance, I guess is what I should say.
That was Freudian. You
No.
you are looking forward to it.
I am looking forward to it for all the wrong reasons. I want it over. But I think the thing that's actually now starting to weigh on me even more about the Snyder Cut is it's going to force me to watch the original Justice League first, because I've got to freshen up on that so that I can spot all the differences. And that may be what angers me the most right now, is knowing I have to go watch that again.
You could watch them back to back. I don't know. I think you should go in cold. I mean, you haven't seen that in a year or so, year and a half.
Yeah, something like that. But I want to be able to accurately spot the differences. And I think some of them are going to be big. I think some of them are going to be minute, but I don't want to like reverse engineer. I don't want to go watch Snyder Cut and then go back and be like, oh, here's what was different. I'd rather just have the original Justice League fresh in my mind, and then I'll parse what changed.
So I think that's the wrong way to do it. I feel like you have forgotten this other movie, and this is what was, quote, and supposed to be, and just watch it and enjoy it as if it were new.
No, I don't think. I think that's completely ridiculous, because I think we need to acknowledge that this is like a do-over, and I think you need to understand that like this is what was delivered as the product that they gave us, and then now they're trying to do a redo. So I think you need to watch it in that context. I don't think this movie deserves to be seen with like a blank slate that nobody else has seen, because that's not what this is.
Well, I mean, I've seen that movie many times, so I'm going to know what's new and what I haven't seen before. But I do think, as far as enjoyment factor, if you go back to back, you're basically watching the same movie, same 2.5-hour movie, and then to the quote same 4-hour movie. Is that what we're...
Okay? Yeah, it's something like that. But I'm not going to go back to back. It'll be like I'll watch Justice League like the week before or something like that. I just need to freshen up on it. I don't want to do a marathon. I don't want to go back to back. That's not what I'll do. But I need to at least familiarize, because the last time I watched Justice League was when we revisited it for this podcast like a year plus ago.
Yeah.
So I don't like it, so I purged it from my memory. So I need to have some sort of baseline here.
Well, I think you should just come in fresh, see what Zach's got for you.
No, it won't happen. I'll be revisiting Joss's first. Okay, so now that we've kicked around, somehow everything is all roads are going to point to Justice League until this is all said and done. It's an inescapable thing right now for me. And we did get the trailer for it. What, yesterday? 2 days ago?
Yesterday.
Okay. Well, I can't remember because there was like
drop. Yeah.
There was 3 teasers leading up to it. Like, give me a break.
I love the teaser for the trailer of a movie that we've already seen 2.5 hours of.
But it was 2 or 3 teasers, right?
Oh yeah. It was 3 days of teasers. Might have been more. I wasn't following Zach before the third one, but I think it was 3 teasers and then the actual trailer.
Okay.
And we still got a month left to go before it comes out.
So I think my plan of attack will be I'll revisit Justice League maybe about a week or so before. Whatever episode that we decide to kind of lead into Justice League, we will re-examine the trailer for the Snyder Cut before we head into the actual Snyder Cut. So I'll have some freshness there that I can work with when we go. But not that I want to beat around the bush anymore, but we also need to talk about another trailer that's going to lead us into what we're covering next week. You want to tell everybody what you found for us to watch?
Well, let's just say that it was either Tom and Jerry, which comes out on HBO Max this week. We opted out for that. And we went with Willy's Wonderland, starring none other than Nick Cage.
And it looks like Chuck E. Cheese / Showbiz Pizza, I guess whatever region of the country you grew up in, goes nuts at night. So basically, if you ever played it or heard of it, it's Five Nights at Freddy's, the movie with Nick Cage.
And I've never heard of Five Nights at Freddy, so that's new. New
yeah,
to
you
me.
should give it a shot. You weren't in the iPhone game back then, like when they were all coming out hot and heavy. I mean, it's basically a horror game where using security cam footage, you try and survive the night at a evil Chuck E. Cheese, where the animatronics come to life and try to come and find you.
Well, that sounds exactly what this is.
Exactly.
So from the trailer, it looks like Nick Cage's car breaks down, and they say, if you clean this restaurant, then I'll fix your car. I'll pay for your car to be fixed. So he agrees, and then all these kids show up to burn it down. Is that what we gathered from the trailer?
I honestly did not pay any attention to the trailer other than I wanted to see the animatronics and where this was all going to go, like how stupid they were going to get with it. So I just assumed that like everything else happening is just filler nonsense, like, paint by number horror stuff, like, oh, we got to get a few people into this area so that there can be some screams and some stuff. But I was just waiting for let's let Nick Cage go crazy like he does with animatronics, puppets and stuff, and that's what I got out of it. That's my whole basis for Willy's Wonderland.
I mean, it does look like the stuff of nightmares. I mean, if you see, I thought they did a good job with the animatronics, making them look super creepy.
Yeah. It looked fine. I think it's going to be, I don't know. I mean, it's going to be potentially really, really unbearable and awful, or it's going to be at least campy enough to get some laughs out of.
Oh, I think it'll be good. Although he doesn't utter a line in the trailer. Do we think he talks at all?
He doesn't need to. I don't know. I think he has some screams or something, doesn't he?
Yes. I think he's yelling as he's destroying something. But does he?
Probably.
Does he have classic Nick Cage lines?
They're holding him back. They don't want to give away all the zingers, the one-liners in the trailer.
I bet he doesn't talk much, if at all.
I mean, I don't know. I could honestly see it being one of those things where Nick Cage isn't even in it that much. Like, the trailer focuses on Nick Cage to go get you to watch, oh, crazy Nick Cage beating up some animatronics, and then really, like, he's in, 15% of the movie, and the rest of it's, like, the kids running around or whatever. So you never know what they're going to do with these types of movies.
You think they're going to kill him off early?
No, I just think that it's one of those things where, like, they present him as, like, the centerpiece of the movie, because he's Nick Cage and the big star, but then, like, he's not actually, because that sometimes happens in those B-level movies, right? Like, you see somebody on the cover, you're like, oh, this has got this guy, and then there's not really that much of them in it. They just tried to put them on to, put butts in the seats, or in this case, if it's straight to DVD, just sell movies.
Yeah, I guess it's on Amazon Prime for your viewing pleasure.
Yeah, I'm certain even if theaters were open in the pandemic, which I mean I know they are, but there's limited releases. My guess is this was a straight to streaming vehicle.
That's a good guess. That's a good guess.
I mean that's Nick Cage's lane right now.
Yeah, he's collecting paychecks.
Him and Bruce Willy, a few other guys, just phoning them in through streaming.
I mean, it's hard to turn down money, you know. And how,
They don't
how
have
long?
enough.
How long do you think this took him to film?
No, not very
I
long.
mean, you think it's like hey, spend a month over here. We're going to give you, $1 million. Like, all right.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he's basically turned into. I mean, at some point we'll have a Nick Cage renaissance, I'm sure. I think he's probably had 2 or 3 of them already in his career, but something will come along where he gets back into like a big mainstream movie. Like maybe National Treasure 3 finally happens and he somehow, gets back into things.
Well, he's got this cult following now of these crazy psycho movies that he's doing. And so he's got this like underground following of Nick Cage. They love him because he's going manic. And that's
Right.
that's what they expect Nick. They don't want to see National Treasure 3. I think that'll ruin it for him.
I don't know. I think he's just enough out there where people can draw that line. Like, I think there's the people that want to see him go crazy, and I think there's people that haven't really followed him down that path. So they're probably like, hey, what's Nick Cage doing these days? And then he'll pop back up in National Treasure 3 on Disney Plus, and everybody will then wonder what the hell Mandy was a few years ago.
Exactly. Like, wait, Mandy? Yeah, that got dark.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it should be a fun watch. I'm interested to see where they go with it. I hope they have a lot of fun with it, and that it's not just cheesy and like corny, but not funny. Like they've got to strike a good balance of like being stupid with it, but not so stupid that you just check out.
Yeah, and
Easier said than done.
I was scrolling through the cast to see if I recognized anybody else, and it's a decent number of people. So there's going to be a lot of people die. That's basically how I looked at it. So there look like a bunch of teenagers that I'm sure will die in some very different ways. So
Yep.
and we're putting this in the horror genre, right?
I'm sure.
And so it's a lot easier to get stars in the horror genre. So I'm putting this for entertainment value at I think it'll be at least 3.
Yeah, I mean, 3 is probably a ceiling. I don't have that high of expectations. I would probably say it's going to be a 1.5 to a 2.5.
That's very, very high.
Very high.
You have next to no expectations for this movie. That's fantastic.
No, I mean, there's no reason to. I mean, given the premise, given who's in it, given the quality of movies Cage has been turning out, I'm expecting to not like it. That doesn't mean it won't have some moments where I'm laughing or that I think, oh, okay, that was good. But I think overall it might be a little bit of a one of those eye-rolling movies.
I think it's gonna be fun. Just
I hope
fun.
so.
Just fun. That's all. Just fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I would need, especially after following something like Judas and the Black Messiah. I think going the other way, putting the needle on the other side, and getting over to like stupidish fun, be a nice palate cleanser.
You don't think those two are comparable?
No, I'm not sure how I would ever draw a comparison between the two, other than to say they are total opposites.
Well, after we watch it next week, we'll try to make that comparison and put them in the same bubble.
Oh, we might be the only podcast to ever do that. Like, here's our thesis on the parallels between Willy's Wonderland and Judas and the Black Messiah.
Hey, maybe that's our thing. Maybe that's what we do now.
I mean, if we pull it off, that would be it'd be newsworthy.
Newsworthy. Yeah.
All right. Well, then let's go ahead and get into Judas and the Black Messiah. I'll read a really, really short description because I want to get your thoughts on this. Can you spoil a true story?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I agree. And Letterboxd does that in its description of the movie.
Oh,
so, like,
wonderful.
I get that, like, if it's the story of Neil Armstrong, okay, there's probably like a certain amount of like, public knowledge about the fact that we landed on the moon that like you probably can't spoil that. I mean, I guess technically you can for like a kid who's 10, but you know what I mean? Like,
right.
That kind of true story has such an expanded knowledge, across all humanity that I would say you probably can't spoil that. But this, I mean, I kind of was vaguely aware of Fred Hampton. I obviously knew of the Black Panther Party, but like I didn't know much about him. So to me, this is an opportunity to learn.
Yeah, I'd never heard of him, so
Yeah.
I didn't know this part. Beyond Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr.
Sure.
This piece of Black Panther and what happened, I guess, after they were assassinated. I didn't know, so I was coming in pretty cold.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things where when I read the letterbox description, and I'm not going to say it here, but like it gives away the story here. So I shifted over to IMDb, and they're a little bit more vague, which I preferred. So this is basically the story of Fred Hampton, who's the chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party, and his betrayal by FBI informant William O'Neill. It was directed by Shaka King, which, as far as I could tell, I think maybe he had one other movie that didn't quite look like it was a big feature film. And the cast we talked about on the last episode, mainly Daniel Kaluuya, Lakeith Stanfield, Jesse Plemons, and then I'll throw out Dominique Fishback, too, who played Fred Hampton's wife. So I guess the first place to start would be, we talked a little bit last episode about our expectations of what the movie would be based on the trailer. What did you think? In line with that? Like, was it what you expected?
Yes and no. I expected very good performances, which I think we got. I had higher expectations for the story of how it was. I know you only have so much flexibility with a true story. I mean, you can't make something overly exciting or engaging when it wasn't. And not saying that this wasn't, but I felt like it was okay. So I was kind of disappointed, maybe because my expectations were much higher based on who was in it and again what we've seen from the trailer. I thought they did really well with it, but I have my issues as well.
Okay.
How about you?
Yeah, it was in line with what I thought. The one difference was, and this isn't a spoiler, I thought that perhaps Lakeith Stanfield's character, I thought he would have been associated with the Black Panthers and then get arrested, and then they try to flip him that way, as opposed to like the way it plays out in real life, which is I guess by my account, what the movie's telling me, he wasn't really involved with the Black Panther Party. He got in trouble with the law, and then they basically turned him into an informant and said, "Hey, go join up with the Black Panthers, and it's because we need some intel from here." So I thought it'd be more of like a friendship that gets betrayed, but it's more of like the betrayal almost sort of happens first, and then you get into the he develops that friendship, and then there's conflict there. So, I mean, I don't think I'm giving anything away there spoiler-wise, because that's in the trailer. I'm just talking about the timing of how things happen here. But overall, I mean, yeah, it was what I thought. A Departed-ish vein in there of, like, there's a mole here in our party, along with, like, the historical, biopic nature of learning about Fred Hampton and the Black Panther Party. So it was definitely what I expected. And I even think quality-wise, it's about what I expected too. It fit kind of nicely in that lane. I had a good time watching it. I will say I think that I would have liked this better in theater, just because when it's a little bit of a slower drama, like I want to feel more absorbed in the movie. And the fact of the matter is, like, if the dog's got to go outside or something like that, I got to pause the movie, go let them out, come back. I was a little bit distracted in the beginning. I think that kind of hurt my understanding, and I'm not holding that against the movie. So what might be happening here from my perspective is I might be giving it a little bit of the benefit of the doubt for some of the slowness or issues I had in the beginning, because I'm kind of putting that on me. So there might be a little bit of forgiveness here from me on that.
Yeah, I could see that. I just hope you don't pause Willy's Wonderland. I want to make sure that you're fully engaged in that once we watch that piece. No, I understand. The movie theater, you're a captive audience. You're not supposed to glance down at your phone. It's just a written, unwritten. I guess it is written. No cell phones. but it's just you just don't do that. While if you're at home, and it buzzes, you're like, oh, I wonder who that is. During the movie, and so if you don't kind of discipline yourself, to watch this as if you were watching, you're going to get all those sorts of distractions. And I do think it does take away from it. Sure.
Yeah.
So really my I'm trying not to get too spoilish here, but Jesse is, I thought, was not only kind of a confusing character, but also I felt like he was miscast, and not just because of our comment on our feelings and our sneak peek of Jesse, but I felt like he was too young for what he was doing. Like he still feels like, I don't even know how old he is, but he felt like he's 25. And then this FBI agent talking to another young person, and they kind of have this buddy thing. But the whole time that they're like negotiating and whatnot, I felt like he didn't have the power to do this. And maybe that's the age of the real guy that he was playing, but I just felt like he was the wrong choice. I didn't feel like he was real.
Okay. I mean, that's interesting because I actually thought he was really, really well cast. And the reason I say that is because Plemons, to me, is one of those guys that is very, very hard to read. So I actually think that fits well with his character. And like, I keep thinking back to Game Night, which I don't know if you've seen that or not, but like, I think he plays a cop in that. And I think you're led to believe that he's like gonna bust them for all the stuff that's going on, but then he actually ends up being like a pretty cool guy in the end. And I think that, to me, like that little balance of like, okay, is he really on Lakeith Stanfield's side? Does he have a little bit of humanity? Does he feel for the Black Panthers, and he's just trying to do his job? And then especially there's a scene with him and Martin Sheen later where there's an interesting conversation going on there where you're like, okay, I'm not quite sure. Is he towing the FBI line, or is he going against them a little bit? So I actually thought him being the way he is, and even with like the way he acts with his sort of facial expression, I liked it because he was always trying to, it seemed like, put up a front about whether or not whose side he was on and what he wanted to do here. And it was a very, at times you could read it as very sympathetic, his face, and at other times I felt like you could read it as like he's dead behind the eyes, where he's like, I'm just an FBI guy and I'm going to do this at all costs. So I actually thought he was really well cast.
Well, and I just, again, I don't know how old is he? Is he mid-30s?
I'm terrible with ages. Like, I literally will be like plus or minus 10 years is the best I could do. So I could see Plemons being, I would say he's at least 30. It wouldn't surprise me if he was 40.
Now, this is pretty easy for us to figure out because the internet, has things like this.
Yeah. I would guess 39.
39? Oh, that's way older than I thought. He is 32.
Wow. I mean, he's just got one of those faces, right? Like, he that doesn't surprise me necessarily. Like, yeah, 32, 42, either one would have worked.
And see, to me, that seems young for his position in the FBI.
But I didn't ever get the sense that he was like some higher up in the FBI.
I don't know. It just, to me, it just felt off. It felt like two kids talking.
I mean, that may not have been far off from what it was. I mean,
no, I'm sure that, again, the true story may be right on base, but I just felt like it was
okay.
Like that's how I felt when I was watching. Like, it doesn't seem right. And maybe that's because I've seen a lot of movies with FBI agents and they're older and they're trying to lean on people and whatnot, but it just didn't feel like he was trying to make a name for himself in the FBI, because he brings him to his house, and it was, how much money do you make? You have this nice house, and it feels like he had been established for a while, and it just all seemed, just that he was too young for the part. But that was my personal opinion. Okay, there.
That's, I guess, when I look, like I said, my age gap. I mean, I could have had Plemons at 35 to 45. Like, I don't think the guy was 50, but if you had told me he was 45 years old, I'd be like, yeah, okay, that's fine. But I mean, I guess to the larger age point, by the end of the movie, how old do you think Fred Hampton was? Did you hear this, or did you look this up?
Well, they said it at the end.
Oh, okay. So then I guess my question would be, did you have the same thoughts about Kaluuya? Because there's no way Kaluuya looks like he's 21. Like, he doesn't come across as 21 to me.
No, and I thought that was weird. Because clearly, I did not think I was watching a 22 and a 21-year-old kid.
Right.
And so if they're just taking certain liberties, with the casting, clearly they've made a good casting choice from the acting ability standpoint on both of them, but neither one of them looked 21 or 22.
Yeah, and I would be interested to know what the thought in that was, because I actually think that the fact that he was 21 doing all this, which would have also meant that when some of the other events happen, he's just a teenager. So does it make it more or less powerful of a message in the film, knowing how young Fred Hampton actually was, instead of watching it thinking you're watching like a 35-year-old guy, you're really watching a 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old. I mean, that's technically an adult, but I guess it would have felt a little bit different. Maybe they don't think it would have resonated as well. Maybe they just didn't think that there was a 21-year-old actor that could bring the same kind of heat that Kaluuya could. I'd be very interested to know what the thought was in that.
I think it's that exactly. I don't think they thought they had a 21-year-old actor that could pull this off. I think they were going for a name that could get cheeks in the seats, with Kaluuya. And obviously he has a track record of these types of roles of like, that's going to bring a crowd. And while he does a very good job with it, I don't think it accurately reflected the way that we were supposed to feel about, not necessarily we're supposed to feel about him, but like you're right. I think the impact of this kid's an up and comer, and they're trying to, chop off the head before he gets, going. Right. And as a kid, I think that, and I think they didn't focus on that point in the movie, because it was a little bit unbelievable for him to be a 20-year-old kid.
Yeah, I completely agree. I wonder how much different it would have felt knowing that throughout the course of the whole movie, because you're like, man, the government's out to get a 21-year-old kid. Like, that's not that it should be any different that if Kaluuya was playing Fred Hampton, who was 35. Like, I mean, it's still crazy that the government felt the need to go after them like that. But when you look at it when it's a 21-year-old kid, or like when he was 18, 19 getting thrown in jail, stuff like that, like that has a very, very different feel. And I get the pros and cons of both. So I'm not sure that I'm not saying I didn't like this, but it was an interesting choice, is all I'll say.
Right. I mean, you think of the FBI assuming that, this 18-year-old kid's going to challenge, America,
right.
Basically like this is the next threat, and he's 18 years old. Like, that speaks a lot to who this guy was. And you're right. I think that was missing in this.
Yeah. So I think the trick is that if you make him younger, I think it definitely paints the FBI and America as being way more evil than it even was in this context, which is fine from a storytelling angle. I think that's one way you could have played it. But I think if you, in a weird way, like, I know this is a true story, but in a weird way, if you cast somebody younger, I think it almost lessens like the impact that they could bring, because I mean, Kaluuya just feels big in every scene, and I'm not sure you can get that if you're looking at a 21-year-old actor, if that makes sense. So I guess they had to just strike a balance there with what they wanted to do. Did they want to make Fred Hampton bigger than life and give him Kaluuya, or lean on the age thing and maybe have to go with a lesser actor?
Well, I think, you have Hoover in there, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that would have played more on his paranoia, mm-hmm. If it was an 18-year-old kid.
I agree.
And so I think that could have been, you could even have them sort of play on the other FBI agents of this guy's like, really? Like, that's who we're worried about, is this 18-year-old kid. Mm-hmm. Sort of pushback on it. But they didn't go that way at all, because I think of who they cast. And so
right.
You're definitely giving acting ability for for a different type of story. And they just said, you know what? We're going to try to get him an Oscar. And we want people to actually see this movie, because we don't know that up and comer that can pull this off.
Sure. So knowing that, would you have, like, as a filmmaker, would you have done something in the beginning of the movie to maybe clue the audience in on just how old Fred Hampton was? Or do you think that would have been so much in conflict with the casting that then it's just sort of like, you're kind of out of it, not believe, okay, you're showing me that this guy just graduated college, you're showing me that he's 19 years old, but it's Daniel Kaluuya, and I'm not buying that he's 19 years old, so now I'm kind of out of it? Or would you just go the path that they did, which is like, okay, just go your whole movie experiencing this and believing whatever you want about the age, because it's sort of irrelevant, I guess, to what we want to tell, and then just hit him with the, oh yeah, at the end he's 21 years old?
I think it would have taken away from it.
Okay.
Because, I mean, anytime you get those, high school movies and the guy's clearly 30, playing a senior in high school, it just immediately takes you out of the realism of what this is. So
Sure.
I feel like once they made the decision to go with the actors that they chose, they had to write that out of the script. But we're going to acknowledge it at the end, just so you have facts of what went on. But I think that would have taken me at like, really, he's supposed to be that young. Now Lakeith maybe could pull off 20, maybe.
Yeah, 'cause I think he's only 29 in real life. So he's not too far.
And he's got more of a baby face, I think.
Yeah.
You might be able to play him down to that age. But if you're not going to do it with both, then don't go there.
Sure.
That's my take.
Yeah, I think it's fair. What did you think about the perspective of the movie in a couple of different ways? So we're really getting this through Lakeith Stanfield's character, right? I mean, it's his perspective on everything in a way, but then also they fold in that documentary. Like, so you're supposed to be, and it kind of confused my son, but I had to kind of explain it. You're looking at Lakeith Stanfield doing a documentary many years later, and then when he goes to tell his version of the tale, it just goes into the movie, right? Like, that's the perspective of the movie, is kind of what I gathered.
Yeah, and I mean we've talked about this on many movies before, of the 20 years earlier. So you immediately know nothing bad's going to happen to him.
Right.
He survives.
Uh-huh.
So he's not going to get, he's not going to get caught and
Right.
tortured and everything right there. We already know that. And so that does take away any fear you have for that character. I do like how they added it, eventually.
Yeah.
But as far as leading with it, I don't agree with that type of storytelling. And maybe it's assuming that you already know the story. I don't know. But for me, I was like, okay, I already know I have no fear for his life because he's going to be fine.
Yeah. And I honestly, the way they did it, I wasn't sure when that interview was happening. Like, we find out later the timeline of the interview, but like as they're showing it in the beginning of the film, like, I had no idea whether we were looking at something 2 years later, 5, 10, 20. It doesn't give you enough there. But yes, to your point, you're right that you can probably reasonably assume that he's going to be safe up to a certain point.
I mean, that's his whole character, right? Is he's trying to play this and not get killed.
Yeah.
And when you lose that fear for his life, I think it definitely takes away from it.
Yeah. Which to me was kind of one of those things where I think the mole, I keep calling it the Departed angle of, trying to figure out who's the mole and who's not. I think there was just enough of that to keep this movie interesting, and they didn't go too far with it. I mean, clearly it was what was driving Lakeith Stanfield's character, but it wasn't necessarily what was driving the movie, because it wasn't like the whole Black Panther and Fred Hampton, the whole Black Panther party. It wasn't like they were on like a giant mole hunt the whole movie. They were just doing their own thing, and then you have this tension here of Lakeith, being caught between the FBI and the Black Panther party. So I thought it was just enough to add a wrinkle to the movie that made it interesting enough and a little bit suspenseful at times, but not enough to where it like just overwhelmed and just became like this massive whodunit instead of focusing truly on like the Black Panther party and Fred Hampton's life.
See, and that's where I thought there was a kind of a miss in focus of, I think they wanted to tell, Fred's story.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's where kind of the two of their story, but I feel like the more intriguing story was the FBI putting these different informants in and what they were doing with them. And they kind of hinted at, the other guy, he's also an informant. That type of, what are all these seeds that they're playing and how are they interacting with another? And there really wasn't that. It was more of Keith's paranoia throughout the whole thing, that nobody really was looking for him.
Right.
It was just kind of him on his own trying to get out, I guess.
Yeah, which I actually respected, given that this was more of a biopic than anything. But you're right. I mean, there's definitely two different movies you could make here. You could make the one that we got, which is really a biopic with some of this other stuff sprinkled in to kind of help move things along and keep things suspenseful. Or you could go full on like Departed, 24 mole hunt here and just make it be the story about how the FBI tried to infiltrate the Black Panther party and not really even, care about or delve into Fred's life all that much. It'd really just be more about, whatever the FBI was trying to do to crack down on these guys. And I think you'd have two very different movies. You get this one, which is more drama, more, just straight acting and story. And this other one would become like this crime suspense thriller kind of thing almost.
Yeah. And that's where I feel like they were trying to straddle the line of both, where I feel like they could have gone just one way with it. I don't know. I feel like it was, obviously you can't tell the story without showing the FBI side of it,
right.
and what they're doing. But I felt like it teased enough to where that's more interesting of a story altogether, and then not folded into the rest of it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, if they would just kept it with, Lakeith's point side of the FBI, then I think that would have been more interesting to me.
Okay. I mean, I'll disagree on that. I liked the blending of the two. I thought it was a great way to take both sides of the coin, get them addressed in here. It gives you the ability to see Kaluuya for what he was as Fred Hampton. It gives you the opportunity to see Lakeith Stanfield and the pressures he's going through, how they come together, how the story, because inevitably, they're linked they're joined at the hip from, the end of the movie to all the events leading through it. So I thought it added a nice wrinkle to biopics can just sometimes get real slow and boring. And even though like the events themselves aren't slow or boring, like they just have a way of just not gripping you as much. And I felt like the story of the FBI and Lakeith was just a nice enough little, 10, 15, 20% of the vein of that movie to like give it some extra juice to get through to where, maybe you've got these other parts that are a little bit slower and a little bit heavy on exposition and building up, some backstory of characters and all that kind of stuff. But this was sprinkled in at just the right times for me to kind of keep the momentum going forward.
Where did you land on this?
So I landed on a 4. In typical Garrett fashion, I'd probably say maybe 3.75, something like that. I think the thing that throws it up to a 4 for me is truly just I liked Plemons, and I thought Kaluuya and Stanfield were both incredible. So like when it did feel slow at times, and I knew mentally that it was slow, I still really, really, really enjoyed seeing both of those guys, Kaluuya and Stanfield, act. It was I just enjoyed watching it.
Whose performance did you like the best?
So this is a tough one for me. I feel like it's two very, very different characters. It's very hard to say. Like, do you like the bombastic? Every time when I think of Kaluuya on screen, when I think of this movie, I picture somebody taking up like the whole screen, like the shots where he's just in the middle of it and he's screaming loud and I don't remember if they played it at the end of the movie or if I looked it up later, but like he nailed Fred Hampton's voice and his speaking patterns. Like it was just, you could just tell like when Kaluuya's on the screen, you're supposed to feel it. And I did, but Stanfield's is like the perfect complement to it. It's like everything not that. It's just all these subtleties. It's the paranoia. It's the nervousness, the kind of shifty eyes, not really wondering what's going on. So like, if I had to pick one, I mean, I would probably go Kaluuya just because it was so bombastic. But like, I think both were equally great.
And because you're biased already.
I mean, I will say I've liked Kaluuya in a few bit. I mean, Get Out is, I think he's incredible in that and a few other movies. But I mean, Stanfield's really good in Get Out as well, and he was good in. I really like his character in Knives Out for some reason. He's probably my favorite character in Knives Out, even though he doesn't do a whole lot. But yeah. So I don't know. What do you think? Where are you at, and what are you thinking on the performances?
So watching it and getting close to the end, I was like, I really like Stanfield's performance in this much better. Not that Clea did bad. He did. I thought he did a great job. But I'm like, I think the standout here is Lakeith Stanfield. So that's just where my mind went, and I was just wondering where you put them on that, because I thought if anybody is Oscar worthy, I had thought going into it would have been the other way around.
I mean, I think they're both Oscar worthy. I don't know, but I don't know. How would you even divvy it up? Can they both be up for supporting?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know how they do
So
that.
what did you give the movie overall then?
Overall, I thought the performances were really good. I had issues with Jesse's, which I'll get to on the spoiler side. But I ended up giving it, I think, between a 3 and a 3.5. I think I gave it 3.5. I'm looking back to see what I actually gave it. But there was, I just felt like something was missing. I mean, I enjoyed the story that I had not heard before. It was again, I liked it, but I felt like there was a different story in there that would have intrigued me more using these same pieces.
Yeah.
And truly, I like it a little less now that you brought up the age, because I didn't even think about that other than like, oh, at the end when they showed me the age, I was like, oh gosh, these guys are really, really young. But now thinking back of how I feel like the movie should have been, makes me like it. Makes me like it less. But that's I think that could have been really, really powerful at that point. But I'm at 3.5.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I think that I think it's a good movie. That's what we're both saying. I think it's definitely worth a watch, just for the performances, for the historical nature of it. If you don't know the story, you're going to learn a lot about it. So definitely a solid movie. I actually really enjoyed it. So yeah, I mean, definitely if you haven't seen it and you're getting to the end of our spoiler-free section, sounds like we're both saying you should go see it.
You should see it for sure.
Okay. All right, you ready for spoilers then?
Let's do it.
All right.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back.
All right. Spoilers.
All right, so where do you want to start in spoilers? Because I don't really know where to go with spoilers.
Well, I'm going to pick on Jesse for a little bit.
Okay.
Because hinted at it already. And so I just want to dive in. I felt like his character is very inconsistent. And so while I had a kind of his age, and I felt like I should have been an older guy hosting him in his house and all that. And maybe had he been a 21-year-old kid, that would have felt right for you aged up these guys, but you didn't age up the FBI agent. And so maybe that was my problem with it. And maybe that was exactly the age he was supposed to be, but like he wasn't. And so they were on too level of a playing field for me, and Jesse felt too young to have that sort of conversation. But then his character turned from, it looked like his conversations with Hoover of he had a conscience, of this isn't right, or wait, hold on, this is what we're doing, we're leaving these guys out to dry, or all this, hey, wait, we're going to go in and kill him. And then he turned to this mafioso type character in like the last fourth of the movie of this is the way it's going to be. I'll tell you what, the one scene that I like that fit the casting, like if you say we're going to cast Jesse in this, but we're going to show you one scene and you tell me if it fits, is him staring in the church.
Yeah.
Like, that's creepy Jesse. That's the Jesse I know.
Yeah.
He's stalking him. I was like, okay, we're going to get kind of a different Jesse now. And then it didn't. We did get a different Jesse, but not the one that I thought we were going to get.
Sure.
And it just seemed like his scene with Hoover, like he was against it, and then he fully embraced it, like the next scene. And that's where I felt like there was a conflict there. I didn't like it.
I guess what I read from that, and I was okay with the conflict. I don't know if that's how that guy really was or not, but the sense that I got from him was that he's just doing a job, and he sees it as rooting out a potential political enemy of the United States. Like it's just that. But then when Hoover comes in and talks about, I mean, he lays it all out on the table that it's basically, his racism that's infiltrating the FBI, or not infiltrating, but like pervasive in the FBI. Like that, I think, is supposed to show that Plemons' character doesn't see it the same way. Like they have the same end goal in that they, I guess, see the Black Panther Party as something that needs to be addressed and taken down. but Hoover's doing it because he's a racist. Plemons is doing it because it's an enemy of the state. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like that's maybe the distinction that they were trying to draw with that, because he has this moral conflict. You can see it coming out in that scene when he's being asked those questions. And it almost came across like Hoover was threatening him too. Like, I don't know if they meant to do that, but so I get that he would be, on one hand, bothered by the line of questioning, but on the other hand, all in on, squeezing Lakeith Stanfield to get where he wants.
And so, I feel like that should have been shown more when he's with Stanfield, that he was conflicted. Like, it seemed like in the interview with Hoover, he was like, why are you asking me these questions about my daughter? Like, this is my daughter. Like, I see where you are and where you're coming from now. And then just fully embraces it a scene later. And that's where I felt like there could have been, no, you're going to do this and you're going to like it type of thing, or I'm going to throw you in jail. I'm going to come after you. It just seems, I felt like there should have been more of a transition with Lakeith, and that's where it took me away. It's like, okay, all this he felt like, I was like, wow, they're really going to make Plemons a sympathetic character, when I was waiting for him to turn bad guy, because that's how I feel about him as an actor.
Right.
But it was I was like, no, they're going to make him the moral compass. He's going to find a way out, and that sort of thing. And then they turn him to this, Godfather-esque leg cross, smoking a stogie in the restaurant of, you're going to play hardball now, which
right.
I didn't feel like it fit.
Yeah. I get it. It's definitely a conflict. I don't quite know how to read it or what their intent was with doing that. Like I said, the only thing I can even remotely draw from it is that they were trying to illustrate that Plemons was doing a job, and he felt that was part of his job, but he was coming at it from a non-racist perspective, whereas Hoover was very much a racist perspective. That's about all I can glean from that. But I would be very interested to check in with the filmmakers and stuff and see what was their intent with being a little gray area with Plemons there, because it does raise questions, and it did make you question motivations. It did feel like that scene with Hoover was going to be a turning moment where some humanity is introduced, so he's not just squeezing Lakeith every chance he gets. And yeah, you're right, they do back away from it, and the end is very much, he's very callous, dead behind the eyes. You're gonna go give me what I need, or you're gonna lose everything, and either way we're gonna get our guy, kind of thing. So yeah, I see what you're saying for sure.
Yeah, I feel like they just threw that scene in to show Hoover was racist.
For sure.
And I don't feel like it fit with the rest of his arc.
Jesse's
arc. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so had he just been kind of consistent with his "this is my job" type of thing, and I'm going with it because this is FBI, it seemed like he was conflicted, and then all of a sudden he wasn't.
Right.
Okay,
well,
I'm good.
Yeah. And adding to your point there, I mean, he explicitly says, like, hey, we got him. What more do you guys want?
Right.
And then they're like, well, we basically want him dead. And he's like, okay. So I do see what you're saying in that regard, that even if you set aside Hoover's motives versus his, he's definitely shown as being hesitant to, kill Fred Hampton. But then he does it. And there wasn't enough explanation there as to why he changed. Like, did they force something on him, like, hey, you're out if you don't do this, or we'll find somebody else to do your job, kind of thing, and he's just protecting his livelihood? Like, what drove him to change? I definitely see your point on that. Yeah,
there's like one scene missing, I guess, so somewhere in there, or an end convo that got cut. I don't know. I just feel like there was a disconnect on that side.
Yep, for sure.
So I was wrong in my prediction on the trailer I thought Lakeith would have switched and kind of betrayed the FBI by the end of the movie. Like, realized this was a cause worth fighting for, and maybe get bad intel, or he knew they were trying to kill Fred and he got Fred out of there, something. Kind of play both sides by the end, and that did not happen.
Nope. And I mean, they definitely teased it.
Yeah.
But
they kind of felt like he was buying in. He was, this is the cause, but did he ever really?
They don't really give you a whole lot of clue, because I mean, even if you look at the documentary footage at the end of the real Bill O'Neill, like he makes a comment to the extent, what did he say? It was something like we all had our sides in this, and I forget exactly what it was. Something along that lines where it made me think like, okay, he never bought in. Like that line struck me as like he was comfortable with what he was doing, being that informant, and he would do it again if he had to, right? He made it sound like two sides to a war. He picked his side, and that's the side he's sticking with.
Oh, I took it differently.
Okay.
I took his, and I'd have to watch it again to quote him correctly, but I took it as he did his part for the Black Panther movement. Like, he did enough for that side that he could be proud of it. Clearly he wasn't after that interview. He went and killed himself. But
right.
I felt like he was saying that, no, I was a part of it. I did enough to help out, but maybe not. That's kind of how he was kind of justifying his actions of, I was a part of that movement. Yes, I did this other thing, but I did enough to justify my place there.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense, because I guess if he wasn't really remorseful for, like, if he was still entrenched in like, hey, I did the right thing. I was not for the Black Panthers. I worked with the FBI. Then I guess why would he kill himself? Unless, of course, he was worried that, the African American community didn't really understand his story and his involvement in all this, and then by being out now on a public documentary, that his life would be terrible afterwards. Like, I don't really know. I mean, I would definitely be interested in seeing now a documentary on Bill O'Neill.
Right. Yeah, just to see, or even that full interview.
Yeah.
Because obviously they cut and pasted, and the one question that we got was, "What would you tell your son?" And that's why I feel like he was trying to justify his place, justifying that he was doing well within the Black Panther, but also did this other thing.
Right.
And then clearly had second thoughts about all that.
Yeah.
Or some.
Yeah.
And who knows why people do what they do, after the fact. And if you're trying to tie the two together, just quite a bit of a coincidence.
Right.
The next day. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm running out of things to say, since we went pretty deep in the spoiler-free section.
We did. We kind of, and true story, it's hard to dance around what's spoilers and what's not, and I think we may have leaned more towards spoilers in the beginning.
Nah, we did good. I don't think we gave anything away that wasn't in the trailer or whatever. So I think we did good. So let's get to our questions then.
Sure.
I am Thor, son of Odin, and as long as there is life in my breast, I am running out of things to say. Are you ready?
All right. What was your favorite moment?
My favorite moment, I think I liked the pool hall scene.
That was good.
With him pretending to be an FBI agent. That was my, he kept his hat down, didn't want anybody to see his face, and then he was just going to take the keys and run.
Yeah, that was good.
Then add that you knew at some point he was going to run into those people again.
Oh, for sure.
And so I just liked how they brought that all together.
Yeah. I would go with the scene you mentioned earlier, scene from the trailer. Fred Hampton giving his big speech in the church. Lakeith Stanfield on guard. Jesse Plemons out in the audience. I knew it was coming exactly when it was there, but it had even more of an impact from the trailer, because like this was shortly after I think Lakeith had threatened to leave, and Plemons had basically said, "I'm going to track you down wherever you go if you leave." So this is really where I think it was right after Kaluuya came out of jail too. So there was just all this stuff kind of churning at once. And one of those, I think, probably, semi-rare moments where the cool scene in the trailer still feels cool, or maybe even a little bit better in the movie, because it's just, sometimes it can be ruined when you show it in a trailer, but this time I felt like it actually played out better in the movie, given everything that was happening.
Did you think we were going to get more creepy Plemons than just the one time in the church?
I did, because the trailer doesn't really show you a lot of the clean-cut FBI guy. You drop your big glimpse of him as, being creepy in a crowd. So I guess I thought maybe he would like constantly be tailing him and stuff like that, but you don't really get that.
Yeah, no, I kind of thought, especially after the church, I thought we were going to get him seeing him everywhere. Of, hey, I know how to find you.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought there would be a couple scenes like that, but it was just the one in the church, and all of a sudden he was back at the restaurant.
Yeah. All right. What's one thing you would change?
Clemens. Again, I didn't believe him. I thought he did a fine job acting. I just didn't. I thought he was too young for the role, and so I would have upped his, put an older FBI agent. But now that we talk about it, I take that back. I would take out the two and put 18-year-old, 20-year-old actors.
I mean, that's your one change in the movie. Like, if you could change anything, you're taking Kaluuya and Stanfield,
I know,
who you say give Oscar performances, and taking them out.
Yes, I think I have to, because I do think that would tell his story better. I don't know who I would put in there. I'm not hip on who's in the Mickey Mouse Club these days, to throw in there. But I think you have to, because this as us talking about it has changed my opinion of it. I think an 18-year-old kid being harassed by the FBI and also being a leader in the community of what he would have been a much more powerful movie.
I would just disagree. I feel like the performances get you invested in the characters. They hooked you in. They communicated everything they needed to. And then I guess I'm the opposite. The more we've talked, the more I felt like that gut punch at the end when they finally tell you that he was only 21. You're like, oh, man, that's crazy. He was only 21 years old. Like, I get that from maybe a filmmaking standpoint, it's not necessarily like the best. I mean, you would think you'd try to cast people who are more in line with the reality of the situation, but I do feel like that gut punch at the end was one of those things where, like, it shouldn't matter, right? Like, we shouldn't be like, oh, well, he was 35 years old, whatever. He can get shot and die. Who cares? But I mean, it is kind of a gut punch to be like, oh, okay, wait, damn, he was only 21. All right. But I don't think I would have traded the caliber of performances that we got, and to try and roll the dice that you can still drive home something as effective with perhaps lesser proven actors.
They are definitely proven, and
right.
But you're assuming that you'd get a lesser performance out of
yes, I am
no name person. So that's why because you're assuming that we get, and which is fair, because who's going to be on that level? They're both very, very good actors,
right?
And so I get what you're saying, but you're also assuming a worse performance.
Yeah, and I think that's a safe assumption. I mean, not everybody can bring it like those two guys.
True.
So for me, I had a couple of things that I thought I would change, none of which was the acting. And it all has to do with, like, I guess the landscape of the time. One part, I'm going to say two things, and I'll just pick one. But one thing was, like, I feel like there was a lot of good that the Black Panther Party did, and they probably just didn't have time to kind of focus in on that. Like, giving back to the community, like, they talk about it, but you didn't really see it. So it was hard to kind of feel like this. I felt for Fred Hampton. I felt for the members of the Black Panther Party. I had a hard time feeling for the party itself. Like, I didn't quite get that sense of, like, okay, what are they doing in their community and stuff like that, which is fine. I don't know that it was overly needed. But the other one I'm actually going to choose that I would change is I was a little confused in the beginning with the landscape of Chicago, let's say, as it comes to the Black Panther Party. What else was there? There was, like, the Patriots. There's like 3 or 4 gangs going on. There's even like a white group that was going on, and I forget what they were called.
I thought they were the Patriot.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, there's the Green Berets, the Purple Berets, the Black Berets, the white people, and I get that part of what we're supposed to realize is Fred Hampton was uniting people around a common cause. It didn't matter your race or anything like that. It was just like you're being, and it's kind of what MLK said, right? You're poor, and they don't care if you're black or white or whatever. If you're poor, and they're going to keep you down. But I would have liked to have understood a little bit more about these gaps that he was bridging, because, like, I kind of understood just from the different berets, like, okay, that's a different, I don't want to call him a gang. I don't know if it was a gang. Like, I guess I had troubles in the beginning understanding who was who, and the grasping, I guess, what it took or what it meant for him to be doing this. And I wish I could have. I don't know how I would have gotten that without just some like 2-minute exposition of like, well, Chicago is divided by these 4 rival gangs. Like, I don't want to do that, but like, I just didn't have enough sense of place in the very beginning.
You in the newscast of somebody reporting?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want the little spinny newspaper that spins forward. I don't want that, but like, I guess I just feel like there could have been something done a little bit more, like even if it's a side conversation where he's like, hey, I gotta, if we're really gonna do this thing, we got to unite this group with this group and this group, and like, I'm smart enough to get that that's what happened. I wish I could have followed along a little bit better with a little bit more real knowledge of what was happening.
They kind of did that, I think. They kind of mentioned the different groups, but I didn't get why the different groups were against one another.
Yeah.
And so, again, backstory of, hey, I feel, and that's my lack of knowledge of what happened with the Black Panther Party and why there's these different factions. But I don't think they did a very good job of explaining whys behind it. Of, this group may be more aggressive. This group is more community driven. This group,
right.
And maybe that could have been, yes, that definitely could have been done more, because you had Clemens saying, hey, this is the same as the KKK, on the other side of the coin, and showing them, they tortured and murdered, the informant once they found him. Mm-hmm. And that they would talk about feeding kids. They would talk about feeding people, but you're right, they never showed it of what they did for the community. I think that would have, if that's what they're trying to combat, of that perception of what that group was, you're right. They should have showed it on screen, opposed to them. Mm-hmm. They mentioned it a lot. How many people did we feed today? Or let's build a hospital, but they didn't show them doing anything.
Yeah.
And so I see that for sure.
Okay. All right. Last question then. If you like this movie, you would also like...
Let you go first.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to say The Departed, even though I've mentioned that several times. I'm going to go with, I think it's a very similar movie, but with the coin flipped. I'm going to go Black Klansman. I think that if you like this movie, I think you will like that. It's another true story. Obviously, we're not infiltrating the Black Panther Party. We're instead infiltrating the Klan. But I think you would enjoy it. I think if you like this, you would enjoy that. I would say Black Klansman is less on the biopic side, but story-wise, there's a lot there. It's less about learning about Fred Hampton, like a singular character. Klansman is. It's less about the singular character and more about just like the story that's real. But yeah, I think that'd be my pick, Black Klansman.
Okay, I was going with American Gangster. I felt like that was, again, sort of the true crime story of this guy you never heard of, and so it was more of a get to know you, government intervention type of thing, and so that's just what I was thinking when I was watching this.
So more the undercover side, because I mean, Fred Hampton wasn't really like a true crime story; it's more of a political thing,
right? I was describing American Gangster because obviously gangster's in the title, so it's a gangster. I'm not
sure.
saying that that they were. I was just saying that if you like this, I think you would like that. And I think that's a little bit more. I feel like it's probably less accurate and more action in that American Gangster movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think you would enjoy it.
Yeah,
that's my recommendation. Go check that out. Denzel's always good.
Yes, for the most part.
For the most part. When's Denzel not?
Well, I mean, I think we both just said that the little things, he was fine.
That's true. Equalizer, he was fine.
Right. Denzel doesn't go below average. Let's just say that. I don't know that I'd ever say Denzel goes below average.
In his performances or his movies?
Oh, performances.
Okay.
Movies for sure. But performances.
Yeah. He always gives at least a 3-star performance.
Thank you. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Deal. I'll accept that.
Okay. Well, that wraps it up for Judas and the Black Messiah. Next week we will be, like you said, visiting Willy's Wonderland with Nick Cage. So go find that one and brace yourself for that.
Whoop whoop.
All right. Carson, where can they find you on Twitter?
At Carson Graff, Graff.
You can find me at 2viewsgarrett, Garrett. You can find the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at TwoViewsMovies, or you can email us at twoviewsmovies@gmail.com. Please don't forget to subscribe to the show via Apple, Google, Spotify, basically anywhere you listen, we are there. And if you're still listening, we do have a few more items to give away if you are still interested. A couple digital codes for Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar, and some Judas and the Black Messiah tickets. So if you somehow listened to this all the way through now and want to go see it again, we have some tickets you can go use. All right. We done?
We're done.
Willy's Wonderland next week. We'll see you then.
What should we do next? Something good? Something bad? Bit of both? Bit of both.